Solo Leveling by Chu Gong. Chapter 11 Part 2 The Potential Jackpot. As soon as Jinwoo got home, he called up his stat window. Ping. Name, Jinwoo Sung. Job, none. HP, 7,229. Fatigue, 0. Level, 39. Title, Wolf Assassin. MP, 638. Stats, Strength, 97. Stamina, 59. Agility, 97. Intelligence, 51. Perception, 81. Available ability points, 0. Physical damage reduced by 20%. Skills, Passive Skill, Unknown, LV, Max, Willpower LV.1, Advanced Dagger Wielding LV.1, Active Skill, Dash LV.2, Murderous Intent LV.1, Fatal Strike LV.1. Item equipped. Warden's Collar, A. No wonder people are starting to notice. He jumped an incredible 12 levels, from level 27 to 39. This was the first time he'd had such an exponential increase since the first instance dungeon, when he'd gone in as level 1 and emerged as level 17. He'd also been low level back then, but it was different now. It was a testament to just how many dungeons he cleared in a short span of time. I've only been doing raids with Jinho for 4 days, and I've already cleared 9 dungeons. On top of that, all 9 were C rank, which were considered the highest level dungeons an individual could clear on their own. The speed at which they were moving was insane, to the point where it was troubling hunters in the area who depended on those very same dungeons to make a living. Jinho, who had a front row seat to this spectacle, could only watch dumbfounded at the dizzying pace Jinwoo was maintaining. After all, it was only natural that the higher his level became, the faster he could get it done. 12 level ups within 9 dungeons meant he was averaging about 1 level per raid. There were 10 dungeons left, and at that rate, he'd easily surpass level 45 by the time he fulfilled his commitment of 19 raids. When his level was in the mid-20s, he'd been able to defeat a B-rank hunter. He couldn't even hazard a guess as to how powerful he was currently. My heart is racing. Jinwoo put his hand on his chest and felt his pulse. Ba-dump, be-dump. Getting stronger was an absolute thrill that he could have never imagined in the past. To think that entering gates and capturing dungeons could be this exciting. It's because I can actually check how much stronger I become. Every time his level increased and his abilities evolved, he could see the difference after each excursion with his own eyes. Hunting. Jinwoo felt like he was a real hunter now. It felt right to describe what he was doing as hunting. There was a saying among animal hunters that locating the next hunting grounds was just as important as the hunt itself. And Jinwoo's next destination was already set. The Demon's Castle. He'd been level 21 or so when he first stepped foot in the Demon's Castle dungeon, and he'd gained almost 20 levels since. He thought it likely that he was more than ready to tackle it now, but remembering Cerberus, the monstrous gatekeeper, gave him pause. What if I open the castle doors, and a horde of creatures ends up overpowering me? He shuddered at the thought. It might be possible to successfully escape using the stealth skill, but he couldn't be certain. A hunter could be lucky 10 times over, but a single mistake could lead to death. That was why Jinwoo refused to take any chances. He needed to be absolutely sure he had the power to defeat a group of creatures at Cerberus's level at once. Cerberus's name was in red. The color of the monster's name indicated its level of difficulty. The only time he'd ever encountered a monster with a red name had been at the Demon's Castle. Most of the monsters found in instance dungeons accessed by keys from mystery boxes were low level, including the ones from today's Myri department store instance dungeon. But for some reason, am I missing something? Jinwoo assumed that the only monster he'd seen with a red name was the one encountered at the demon's castle, but something niggled at the back of his mind. He was definitely forgetting something. Was there a red-named monster other than the one in the demon's castle? But that wasn't possible. He'd almost died when he'd fought Cerberus at level 21, so if he'd met a monster labeled in red earlier, he would've. "Oh!" he blurted out. Of course. He'd had one other close call with such a monster. The penalty quest. The centipedes in the desert had also had names floating in red. Poison-toothed, a giant desert centipede. That had been a forced encounter from a while ago, back when he hadn't made the connection between the new creatures and the term monsters, so it took a moment for him to remember them. If I'm able to defeat those centipedes easily, he'd have enough confidence to raid the demon's castle. There had been more than one centipede, so he'd also be able to test whether he could handle a coordinated attack from a group of such high-level monsters. The question was, how to reach them. Is skipping the daily quest the only way to get back there? Whether he completed the penalty quest or the daily quest, the amount of ability points he would receive would be the same, which meant he had nothing to lose. I'll go to the penalty zone tomorrow. When he thought about the fact that he would be skipping the daily quest on purpose in order to do the penalty quest, it was amusing, considering he'd barely survived the last time. I wonder if they'll drop any items or experience points. His lips started to curl up at the thought, but his musings were interrupted as his perception suddenly alerted him to a presence stepping out of the elevator at the end of the hall. The light footsteps were familiar to him. Jaina's back. It was 11 p.m., the time his sister usually returned. Jinwoo got up before she could even start rummaging through her pocket for the key. Click. "Oh!" Jaina exclaimed playfully. When he'd first started opening the door, she would get startled, but she'd gotten used to it. If there's one thing humans are good at, it's adapting. "I'm home." "Welcome back." Jaina greeted her brother and wandered off to her room. Jinwoo turned to lock the door after her when, "Hey, Jinwoo!" Jaina cracked her door open and stuck out her head. "Do you have any days off this week?" "What for?" "My homeroom teacher said she needs to have a parent-teacher meeting, but it's fine if you can't make it." She looked anxious, as if this was a special request from her teacher. A parent-teacher meeting. Since Jaina was a senior, her teacher would also be busy making sure her students had plans for their futures. Jinwoo would have preferred to avoid the meeting, citing his busy schedule as an excuse, but unfortunately, he had a day off. "Thanks for nothing, Jinho." After some deliberation, he replied, "Thursday." "Really? Awesome." Jaina's expression lit up instantly. Jinwoo sensed she was seconds away from tackling him in a hug, so he quickly waved her off. "Tisk!" She rolled her eyes at him before retreating back into her room. A sigh spilled out of Jinwoo. "Huh!" Non-stop raids, revisiting the penalty zone, and now a parent-teacher meeting the day after tomorrow. It was shaping up to be a busy week. Jinwoo left home early, since he had a full schedule today. Jinho had booked 4 gates. It seemed like he was making up for the fact that they were off tomorrow. Well, considering how fast I've been clearing them, 4 or 5 dungeons a day shouldn't be a problem. The bigger issue was that it was uncommon for multiple C-rank gates to appear in close proximity, but today was their lucky day. Jinwoo arrived at the apartment entrance with a spring in his step. However, in place of Jinho's van in its usual parking spot, he detected a suspicious presence. "Tisk!" He would have let it go were it not for yesterday's events. "I thought I made things clear." Jin Woo easily located a man in a suit lurking nearby. He was looking at his watch, so he didn't notice Jin Woo approaching until the hunter stepped into his space and spoke up. "Excuse me." The man jumped. "Hunter Sung." It was like he'd seen a ghost. "I guess this is the reaction I was hoping for when showing off stealth." Jin Woo tooted quietly. "Are you from the White Tiger Guild?" "Sorry?" "Oh yes, I'm Kichul Hyun of the 2nd Administration Team of the White Tiger Guild." This must have been the subordinate that manager had mentioned last night. "Pleased to meet you, sir." Kichul peeked at Jin Woo as he extended his hand. He obviously wanted to shake, but Jin Woo wasn't in the mood to indulge him. After a brief silence, Kichul turned red and withdrew his hand. "I believe I made it very clear that I am not interested in joining a guild." Kichul hastily waved. "Oh, that's not why I'm here." He then offered Jin Woo the travel mug in his other hand. "What's this?" Jin Woo peered at the multicolored liquid in the semi-translucent bottle curiously. Kichul puffed out his chest. "It's a green smoothie. I made it myself, so I can vouch for the quality." As Kichul continued to offering it to him, Jin Woo felt obligated to accept the juice. "So you've been waiting here since the crack of dawn just to give me this?" "Yes, of course. It's for your health." Jin Woo briefly wondered why the White Tiger Guild was invested in his health. Kichul bowed with a bright smile as he left. "I'll be seeing you, sir." He waved goodbye, and Jin Woo waved the bottle at him in response. What an interesting guy. As soon as Kichul was out of sight, Jin Woo examined the contents of the travel mug. He'd heard tales of top insurance salesmen winning over customers by bringing them bottled drinks, but this was the first time he'd heard of anyone bribing someone with a homemade green smoothie. In any case, I can't just throw it out. Not that Kichul would, but even if the smoothie was poisoned, it wouldn't be a problem, since Jin Woo had the detoxing buff. He figured he may as well give it a taste. Slurp. Jin Woo's eyes lit up as he tried a sip. Not bad. Just then, he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Boss!" He turned around as Jinho approached. The always sunny-faced Jinho gestured in the direction Kichul had left. "Boss, who is that?" "The guy who was just here." Jin Woo merely answered. "Insurance salesman." "Uh-huh." The ever-optimistic Jinho accepted this answer without a second thought. Jin Woo looked around. "Where's your car?" If Jinho had spotted Kichul, it meant he'd also arrived earlier, but his questionable van was nowhere in sight. "I parked it over there, boss." "How come?" "You know the murders with no discernible pattern recently committed in the area? People have been eyeing me suspiciously, since I don't live here." Jin Woo bobbed his head. The murders had been all over the news lately. The victims were mostly young women, and there had been 2 incidents this month already. And then, to see an unfamiliar black van loitering at the entrance of the apartment building, no wonder residents were suspicious. Slurp, slurp. Just then, Jin Woo finished off the smoothie. He shook the bottle to get at any last drops before heading off to where the van was parked. "Let's roll." "Yes, sir." This particular dungeon was crawling with lizardmen. Lizardmen, as the name implied, were a cross between lizards and humans. They were bipedal, could wield weapons, and some could even use magic. Lizardman mages were rare, but they could be a handful. One such mage conjured up a fireball in each hand. Magic? When Jin Woo attempted to get closer, the 2 lizardmen guarding the mage thrust their spears at him. They had quick, reptilian reflexes, and Jin Woo was forced to jump back, narrowly avoiding impalement. Seconds later, fireballs came hurtling toward him. Flum! Flum! "Look out, boss!" Jinho shouted from where he was watching the fight at a safe distance. Kaboom! Explosions shook the narrow cave, and thick smoke filled the area. Cough, cough! Jinho coughed hard as he covered his nose with the back of his hand, but he was more concerned about Jinwoo than himself. The attacks from lizardman mages were quite destructive. His fears proved unwarranted though, as Jinwoo emerged from the smoke unscathed. Jinho was starry-eyed. Amazing! Despite lizardmen being some of the toughest opponents one could encounter in a C-rank dungeon, Jinwoo had faced a mage's attack head-on without a scratch. He also seemed to be getting faster every day. I'm probably imagining that, right? Jinwoo spat out the soot that had fallen into his mouth. Toad! What landed on the ground was black. These bastards. Jinwoo was not happy about having to breathe in the ash from some lizardman's flashy magic trick, and his scowl put his displeasure on clear display. Skill, murderous intent has been activated. Dagger shot out from his furious gaze. Debuff, panic has been activated. All the opponent's abilities will decrease by 50% for 1 minute. The lizardmen exposed to murderous intent became agitated. Skreek? Skrock? Jinwoo didn't miss a beat, and threw Kasaka's venom fang with all his might. The dagger flew straight and lodged itself between a guard's eyes. SHHHNK. It was too fast for a lizardman with reduced speed to dodge. Scraw! The other guard wailed as it witnessed its comrade's death. When it lunged at Jinwoo with its spear, though, it missed. Jinwoo had suddenly disappeared. Scrawkaw! The mage was worked up. Scrawkaw! As the mage repeated its cry, the guard turned to it and began screeching. Skreek! The guard bared its teeth as it approached the mage, which refused to back down. Skrock! Right then. Cack! A hole burst open in the guard's chest. The startled mage, now covered in blood, scurried back. Scree! Whoosh! As stealth deactivated, a spear appeared in the guard's chest, and the one holding the shaft was Jinwoo. He let go, and the impaled lizardman fell lifeless to the ground. Whump! As it did, Jinwoo retrieved Kasaka's venom fang from the other guard's forehead. Skreek! Red flames flared in the mage's hands, but Jinwoo didn't give it a chance it needed. Dash! In an instant, the distance between Jinwoo and the mage shrank, and the mage's eyes widened. Its reptilian orbs looked slimier up close. Whoosh! Jinwoo evaded the flame shooting from the mage's hands, slipped behind it, and stabbed the dagger at its spine. Fatal strike. SHHHK. The mage shrieked. Scream! Jinwoo's second stab to the back resulted in a feeble scream. SHHHK. Gack! The mage coughed up blood as it toppled forward. Whump! Jinwoo mentally pumped his fist in victory. That was a nice, clean fight. Yes! The system chimed, as if to celebrate his win. Ping! You have leveled up. The player has reached the required level. A strange message followed the usual one. The required level? He had no idea what that could mean, but when the chime rang again, his heart started beating so fast that it almost hurt, and he had to make an effort to calm it. Ping! A job change quest has arrived. Would you like to accept the job change quest? Y/N, a job change quest. Jinwoo was so focused on leveling up and increasing his stats that he'd forgotten about one line in his stat window. Name, Jinwoo Sung. Level, 40. Job, none. The third slot of the stat window indicated his job. Changing my job means he had an opportunity to change it from nothing to something. He would have a job. In most video games, characters benefited greatly from changing their job, so it stood to reason that it would function similarly within this system. Ba-dump, be-dump. His heartbeats were deafening. After realizing he was one step closer to his ultimate goal, he just couldn't calm down. Would you like to accept the job change quest? Y/N, the choices kept flashing before his eyes. Of course What kind of idiot would waste an opportunity like this? Jinwoo was more than happy to accept the job change quest. Except, something stopped him. Hang on. There was no way to tell what kind of quest he'd get. Both his instincts and his rationality were now sounding alarms. I'm inside a dungeon. Dungeons were the most dangerous places in the world. Even if he now had plenty of experience with C-rank dungeons, a dungeon was still a dungeon. There was no need to intentionally court danger. Besides, Jinho was here too. It wasn't that Jinwoo didn't trust him, but there wasn't any reason to reveal the system to him or attempt to explain whatever strange phenomenon might occur when he changed jobs. Things might get too complicated. Besides, depending on the quest, Jinho might be in danger. What if a monster appeared out of thin air? That would actually be preferable. Monsters he could defeat, but it could be a more extreme quest. The two urgent quests came to mind. It could tell me to get rid of the nearest hunter. And that was just one example, though this was only a theory for now. Jinho appeared in that instant. Boss! It looked like one of the fireballs had landed near him, as he was covered in soot. How did you disappear and reappear during the fight? Did you always have that skill? Jinho's face was flushed, and his eyes were sparkling with excitement. He seemed fascinated by the stealth skill. I think his current state is much more fascinating, though. Jinwoo took a handkerchief out of his inventory instead of answering. It had been a daily quest reward from the day before yesterday. Be boss? He rubbed Jinho's face with it. Ack! God! The once white fabric was now black. Jinho took the handkerchief Jinwoo passed over and realized his state. Embarrassed, he quietly wiped himself clean. Jinho! Yes, boss? I just remembered that I have something I need to do. Jinho spun around. Does that mean you have to leave? Once I'm done here, yeah. Understood. Then I'll cancel the reservations for the other gates. Jinho didn't want to show it in front of Jinwoo, but he found the cancellations regrettable. I'm running pretty low on cash. He was funding this entire operation with his own savings, and he had no other paid work. He was limited in how much he could borrow, because he was keeping everything a secret from his father. Association policy stated that he couldn't get refunds for canceling. It was basically flushing money down the toilet. So how could he not feel bad? To make matters worse, Jinho was spending a lot more than he planned due to their unique method of clearing gates. That was more money gone. His shoulders slumped helplessly. However, Jinwoo nonchalantly responded. Why cancel and waste money? Jinho blinked. Huh? But if you don't enter a gate within 2 days after booking, the permit gets revoked anyway, boss. Jinwoo was fully aware of this. Leave it to me. Did Jinwoo already have a solution? Jinho had no idea but felt he could count on him. Meanwhile, at the White Tiger Guild headquarters. Managerin, do you have a single thought in your head? A big, booming voice erupted from the offices of the second administration team. The voice belonged to Yunho Beck, the guild master and CEO of the White Tiger Guild. It was never a good thing when the big boss himself descended from the top floor to read someone the riot act. Why are there no gates reserved to train our new recruits? Do you realize we're already 3 days behind schedule? All the other employees kept their heads down, worried they'd be next on the firing line. Manager kept his eyes on the floor as President Beck shouted and gestured wildly. Sang-in was experienced enough to know not to actually reply and further rile his boss, the way his subordinate Kitchell did. It was best to keep his mouth shut in situations like this. It didn't matter what he thought. President Beck shook the report he received that morning from the second administration team.
You call this an excuse? You couldn't book any gates because you were outbid by another group? Does the guild not have enough money? What? Are they funded by some little rich kid?
It was tempting to answer that question, but Sang-in steeled himself and kept quiet. He had promised Jin Woo, after all. If I say anything now, I'll have to out those two. Oblivious to Song-min's internal conflict, the president continued shaking the building with his bellows.
I don't care if it costs 1 or 200 million won. Do whatever it takes and book a damn gate. Understood?
As if on cue, Song-min's phone rang.
Ah, I'm really sorry that I missed your call. Was with a friend, so I was shy.
Sang-in sneaked a peek at the caller ID, and his eyes widened.
Sorry, sir. I'll just be a minute.
The main job of the second administration team was recruitment, and much of it came down to good timing. Sang-in was the manager, and although Beck was still seething, it would be foolish to keep Sang-in from answering his calls.
Well, take it.
Beck acquiesced. The manager excused himself with a quick nod and promptly answered the phone.
Hello, Sang-in of the White Tiger Guild speaking.
Beck crossed his arms and waited for the conversation to end.
Yes, understood. If you wait for us at the cafe on the first floor, we'll be right there. Great, we'll see you then.
Sang-in hung up and rapidly said,
Sir, I have to head out for a while.
This was Sang-in, the ace of the second administration team. If this was a matter where he was willing to sprint out in the middle of a tense situation after a single phone call, Beck's face softened slightly.
Is this related to a new recruit? Yes, sir.
Judging by the confidence on Song-min's face, Beck surmised that something important was at hand. Manager is personally heading out to scout this new recruit? That meant this candidate had to be exceptional. Beck's crunched expression suddenly smoothed into a delighted smile.
Far be it from me to stand in the way of our recruitment expert. Don't worry about things here and get going.
Sang-in bowed again and quickly ordered,
Assistant Manager Hyun, bring the contract and seal. Yes, sir.
The two were out in a flash. Once they'd left, Beck surreptitiously interrogated a male staffer.
So what's the deal? What is manager in being so proactive?
The male employee shot an imploring look at the female coworker beside him to come to his rescue, but she shook her head. Her eyes made it clear she didn't know either. Shoot, he hesitantly replied.
The thing is, sir, I'm not quite sure.
He expected the president to lose it right then and there, but surprisingly, he remained quiet. He's up to something, and he's even hiding it from his subordinates? Beck rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Manager was often credited with single-handedly building up White Tiger to what it was today, and here he was, hanging off this potential recruit's every word. Is he about to make another big score? A smile bloomed on President Beck's face. Why is this coffee so bitter? Jin Woo frowned. He'd ordered espresso thinking it would be similar to instant coffee, but it tasted more like bitter herbal medicine, not to mention the price was exorbitant for something that tasted so awful. 6,000 could have bought me a few canned coffees too. He was trying to figure out how many sugars he had to pour in to make it taste more like canned coffee when... Ting-a-ling. The cafe door opened, and Sang-in and Kitchell entered.
Over here.
Jin Woo waved his hand. Song-min's and Kitchell's faces lit up as soon as they spotted Jin Woo, like two kids who'd spotted Santa Claus.
I didn't expect to see you again so soon,
Sangmin offered in greeting as he sat down across from Jin Woo, with Kitchell taking the seat next to his manager. He exchanged nods with Jin Woo. Sangmin wanted to strike while the iron was hot, so he reached for the contract as soon as he was seated.
First, let's discuss terms.
It was clear he was extremely eager to get Jin Woo to sign with them, but Jin Woo instantly rejected him.
I'm not here about the contract.
Sangmin's hand stopped in midair. Kitchell also looked dumbfounded. The manager haltingly asked,
So then, what brings you to the White Tiger Guild?
His disappointment was as great as his expectations. The super rookie had walked in on his own 2 feet, but refused to sign as soon as he saw the contract. Had he changed his mind in that short span of time? As Sangmin tried to make sense of it, Jin Woo answered him mildly.
I'm here because I want to help you. Excuse me? Pardon?
Sangmin and Kitchell shared the same reaction. As they exchanged surprised glances, Jin Woo continued calmly.
You said you were having a rough time training new recruits because our squad was sweeping up all the C-rank gates. That's correct. We can't exactly take new recruits to higher rank dungeons because we're having trouble reserving C-rank ones. And that's why I'm here.
Sangmin cocked his head.
Sorry, but I'm not sure I follow.
Jin Woo decided to stop beating around the bush.
We wish to sell you 3 permits we have for C-rank dungeons. Ah.
Kitchell let out a noise. The 2 White Tiger employees finally grasped Jin Woo's intentions. As he put away the contract, Sangmin pointed out,
If you really want to help us, then wouldn't it be more efficient to stop booking C-rank dungeons?
Jin Woo shook his head.
We have our own reasons for needing them. Then what about today?
Jin Woo smiled pleasantly.
I wanted to help you out with your dilemma, of course.
Could they trust those words? Before Sangmin could begin calculating everything in his head, Jin Woo continued.
This offer only stands for today. We're also in a position where we can't postpone our raids. Miss this chance, and you won't get another for a while.
It was like he was on a home shopping show, promoting a product.
Just about to sell out.
Sangmin was torn. Seoul wasn't the only city with gates. If they had to, they could take their recruits to train elsewhere. The problem with that was they could set off sparks with established guilds or strike squads in the area. What's more, doing so could give whatever large guilds overlooking those regions, like the famed guild in Honam or the Knights Guild in Yeongnam, a reason to look down on them. The White Tiger Guild could develop a reputation as incompetents unable to train their rookies on their home turf. We wouldn't be able to deny it either, because that was the cold, hard truth. And if other prominent guilds considered them a laughingstock, what self-respecting newbie would want to work for them? Public perception was everything for a guild.
Okay.
Sangmin came to a conclusion after much deliberation. Please,
sell us the permits. 3 is perfect for our needs. How much would you like for them?
The White Tiger Guild had plenty of money, but there was no point trying to compete financially with Eugene Construction. Besides, Sangmin also wanted to maintain a good relationship with Jin Woo. Shouldn't he be grateful Jin Woo was willing to give him the gates? He was less grateful for the price.
300 million 1 for 1, so 900 million for all 3. GCK!
Sangmin and Kitchell almost choked.
That's too moo.
Kitchell tried to interrupt, but Sangmin quickly stopped him. Something similar had happened the last time they met. When they couldn't agree on the price, Jin Woo had cut off the conversation without a second thought. This situation had come full circle, in a way. If he passed this up, he'd have no choice but to book a C-rank gate later, or worse, train the new recruits in a different city. I should at least try to negotiate. It would be a shame to fold so quickly. No matter how one looked at it, 300 million won per gate was practically extortion. These days, Jinho's squad paid an average of 100 million for a permit, asking for 3 times that was reaching, and both parties were aware of that fact. He started high, knowing we'd negotiate the price. Sangin recalled what the president had said in the office.
I don't care if it costs 1 or 200 million won. Do whatever it takes and book a damn gate.
That was tantamount to getting the president's approval right there. And he wouldn't be able to deny it, as everyone in the second administration team had heard those exact words. Sangin took a breath and made his counteroffer.
300 million won is too much even for us. So how about 200 million won?
Deal? Jinwoo stuck out his hand before Sangin could finish his sentence. In his confusion, Sangin instinctively took it.
That's it? Yes, 200 million won per gate. Please wire the money to our account.
It all happened in a blink, but Sangin was relieved it had gone as smoothly as it did. He lightly shook Jinwoo's hand.
Thank you very much. Glad to be of help.
Jinwoo beamed. Sangin could now afford to relax a little. Not only had he resolved the training problem, but he'd gotten a little bit closer to Jinwoo. Deals are based on trust, after all. Indeed, he would build up his relationship with Jinwoo step by step, and Jinwoo would be on his side in no time. He shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. Sangin cheered mentally. Jinwoo was the first to stand.
I suppose I'll see you around. Oh, and here.
He handed Kitchell a paper bag with a travel mug inside.
Thank you for the smoothie. It was really good. I'm glad it was to your taste.
Kitchell blushed as he accepted the bag. With that, Jinwoo left the cafe. As soon as he was far enough from Sangin and Kitchell, Jinwoo gave Jinho a call. After a few rings, Jinho's excited voice picked up.
Boss! 600 million won actually came through.
Jinwoo wore a satisfied grin. It had been a successful transaction. He was able to sell the permits for double the price they'd paid instead of letting them go to waste. It was a huge win. Jinho was incredulous.
Boss, how'd you do it? Who did you sell those C-rank gates to? That's a trade secret. Huh? Rest up. I'll see you in 2 days.
Leaving Jinho baffled, Jinwoo swiftly hung up. Click. Later that night, at the office of the second administration team, Kitchell urgently approached Sangin.
Sir! Sir!
What? Sangin took his eyes off his computer monitor. Kitchell urgently pointed at his phone.
Please take a look. What is it?
Songmin's eyes narrowed as he focused on the screen. It was the Hunters Association official website, accessible only by hunters. Specifically, Kitchell was on the page that listed gate locations and showed permit auction prices in real time.
What the? Why are there so many unclaimed C-rank gates in our area? And they're all going for less than 10 million. That means...
Songmin's mind raced.
Jinho's squad didn't book a single gate today.
He then remembered what Jinwoo had said.
I have time on Thursday.
Tomorrow was Thursday. Jinho's squad hadn't been planning to go on a raid from the start. Sangin had unwittingly overpaid for the permits.
Huh?
Sangin had to laugh. The clue had been there all along, but he'd come to the realization too late. That was his mistake, but at least it had helped calm down the president.
We've been duped, Managerin.
At that moment, Sangin received a text. Ding! It was from Jinwoo. With this, we're even. I'll forget the fact that you spied on me. He's a tricky one, isn't he? Sangin swallowed his laugh. If this made them even, as Jinwoo said, It was a win for the White Tiger Guild, since the ultimate goal was to recruit Jin Woo. And to them, it wasn't that much money anyway.
Let's think of this as an investment in Jin Woo.
The hope was to see a return on that investment. With a twinkle in his eye, Sang closed the message.